Apparently, telling someone that a laptop does not have legal ownership of a four-person table is now causing a scene, which is interesting. Because I thought causing a scene involved more than asking a very reasonable seating question while holding hot coffee. I went to the coffee shop at 10:15 on a Saturday morning because my book club was meeting there at 10:30. And before anyone says, why meet at a coffee shop if you need a table? Because coffee shops have tables. That is actually one of their defining features. There were 4 of us coming, not 12, not a wedding party. 4 adult women with books, drinks, and the ability to use indoor voices. We are not a loud group. We discuss historical fiction and occasionally whether an author needed that many flashbacks. That is not a public threat. I arrived early because I believe arriving early is how civilized people avoid becoming problems for strangers. I ordered a latte, paid, tipped, took the little number, and looked for a table. That is when I saw her. One person at a 4-person table. One person, a laptop in front of her, a phone to the side, a tote bag on one chair, a jacket on another chair. A notebook open like she was drafting foreign policy. A half-finished iced coffee sweating on the table, and not a single sign that 3 other actual human bodies were expected. Now, to be fair, she was working. I respect work. I am not against productivity. I own a planner with tabs. But there is a difference between working in public and annexing furniture. At first, I said nothing. That matters. People always act like I marched in and declared table reform. I did not. I looked around. I checked the back corner. I looked near the window. I even considered the tiny round table by the trash station, which is basically the coffee shop version of a punishment bench. No 4-person table was open. Meanwhile, this woman had created a private office with a pastry case view. If you appreciate basic coffee shop table etiquette, subscribe, because apparently one laptop can now occupy more seats than a family of 4. I waited with my latte. One of my book club friends texted, "Here in 5." Another texted, "Parking." So the situation had a timeline. This was not theoretical. This was not me inventing a future need. Actual people were approaching. The woman at the table typed very intensely for about 11 seconds. Then she stopped and looked at her phone. Then she typed again. Then she adjusted one earbud. Then she took a sip of coffee and looked out the window like a poet in a commercial. That is not a meeting. That is ambiance. So I walked over with my calmest voice and said, "Hi, are these seats taken?" Perfectly normal question. She looked up and said, "I'm using them." Now, notice the wording. Not, "Oh, sorry, I'm waiting for people." Not, "I can move my bag." Not, "You can take the chairs." She said, "I'm using them." Using them how? Emotionally? I smiled and said, "Oh, I just mean, are other people sitting here?" She said, "No, but I need the space." And somehow I became the problem. I said, "Of course. I'm just meeting 3 people, and this is a 4-person table." She said, "I got here first." There it was, the ancient playground doctrine. I got here first. Very powerful when you're 6 and arguing over a swing. Less powerful when your tote bag has a better seat than someone's spine. I said, "I understand. I'm just asking if maybe the bag and jacket could move so people can sit." She looked at me like I had asked her to dismantle a home office during a power outage. She said, "I'm in the middle of work." I glanced at the laptop. The screen was open to what looked like a spreadsheet, although I will admit I did not read it because I am respectful of screens. I am not a snoop. I observe layout. I said, "I'm not asking you to stop working. I'm asking whether the chairs can be chairs. Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to understand the new rules. When did bags and jackets become customers?" She said, "There are other tables." I turned and looked around in a slow, visible way. Not dramatic, informational. The only open table was the tiny trash-adjacent circle, which could hold 2 cups and maybe 1 disappointed muffin. I said, "Not for 4 people." She said, "That's not really my issue." And there it was. The sentence that explains half of modern society. At that moment, my first friend arrived. She stood next to me holding her cappuccino and a book, looking at the table, then at me, then at the bag chair. She has known me for years, so she could already feel a public standards moment forming. She whispered, "It's fine, we can squeeze somewhere." But it was not fine. That is how standards disappear, one squeeze at a time. The woman at the laptop sighed and moved her jacket from one chair to the back of her own chair very slowly, like she was making a donation to a disaster fund. Progress. But the tote bag stayed. I said, "Thank you." "And the bag?" She said, "I need access to it." I said, "You can access it from the floor." Was that too direct? Maybe. Was it spatially accurate? Completely? She said, "I don't want my bag on the floor." I said, "I don't want my friend standing beside a chair occupied by canvas." The espresso machine screamed right then, which honestly helped the moment. It added drama without me having to raise my voice. If you think chairs are generally intended for people more than tote bags, hit the like button, because apparently that statement now requires a support group. My second friend arrived, then my third. Now there were 4 of us, 4 actual customers, each with a drink, each trying not to look like we were in a hostage negotiation over furniture. The woman finally put the tote bag under the table. Not on the floor, exactly, more like halfway on her shoe, as if protecting it from the moral contamination of tile. We sat, and I thought the situation was resolved. It was not resolved. Her laptop remained in the center of the table, angled wide charger cord stretched toward the wall like a tripwire. Her notebook took up the corner where my friend tried to place her scone. Her phone was face up, buzzing every few minutes, and each buzz made the table vibrate like the laptop was trying to communicate. I said nothing. For about 4 minutes, then the charger cord slipped slightly, and my friend almost caught it with her ankle. I said, "Careful. There's a cord." The laptop woman said, "It has to be plugged in." I said, "I assumed that. I just meant it's across the walkway." She said, "People can step over it."
Technically, yes. People can step over many things. A puddle, a sleeping dog, someone's standards.
That does not mean they should have to while carrying coffee. A barista came by with a tray and stepped around the cord. I looked at the cord. The barista looked at the cord. The cord looked guilty. I raised my hand slightly and said to the barista, "Is there maybe a safer outlet set up for this?" The laptop woman immediately said, "Are you serious?" I said, "About cords?" "Yes." The barista, who looked too young to be refereeing furniture law, said, "We just ask that cords don't block the walkway."
Exactly. Store policy had entered the chat. The woman unplugged the laptop with the energy of someone being exiled.
Then she said, "I can't believe this." I said, "I know, it's a lot for a latte." My friends stared at their books like they had never met me. Then the woman started packing up dramatically. Laptop closed. Notebook slapped shut. Pen dropped into bag. Charger wrapped like she was winding up evidence. She said, "I hope you enjoy your table." I said, "Thank you, we will." Apparently that was the wrong answer. She said some people think public spaces revolve around them. I said agreed, and somehow that was treated like escalation. She left, but not before taking a picture of the table. Not of us directly, I think. More of the general scene, which people online later called documenting.
Interesting. When I document, I am dramatic. When someone else documents, they are preserving evidence.
We had our book club. Mostly we discussed 3 chapters, one character's suspicious inheritance, and whether the author understood how wills work. But the energy was off because everyone kept saying things like, "Maybe next time we just reserve somewhere," which is exactly how one laptop ruins community. That evening, my sister sent me a screenshot from a local group. The post said, "To the woman who bullied me out of my table at the coffee shop today, I hope your book club was worth it." Bullied her. I asked if chairs could be chairs. The comments were predictable. Remote workers deserve space, too. Of course they do. Space, not a 4-chair kingdom. Someone wrote, "First come, first served." Another wrote, "Book clubs are always loud."
We were not loud.
Brenda whispered the word probate one time. My sister said, "Please tell me this wasn't you." I said, "Define bullied," she said. "Did you tell someone their laptop didn't own the table?" I said, "Not in those exact words." My husband heard this and said, "Why are you always in local posts?" I said, "Because local posts lack context." He said, "Did you make the woman move?" I said, "The chairs were liberated." He closed his eyes. He does that when he knows the phrase was good, but the situation was bad. The next week, I went back to the same coffee shop. Not to make a point. I wanted coffee. And I believe in returning to places where society has recently learned something. Near the ordering counter, there was a small new sign that said, "Please share larger tables during busy times." Now, did they put that sign up because of me? I cannot prove it. I'm not claiming direct causation. I'm simply saying I raised a concern, and then the wall developed language. That is called impact. I took a picture for my records, not to post. Documentation is not obsession. Documentation is how responsible adults protect timelines from people with tote bags and revisionist tendencies. The same barista saw me looking at the sign. She gave me the smallest smile. People can interpret that however they want. I interpreted it as quiet cafe agreement. So no, I do not regret saying something. I regret that a 4-person table became a private workstation. I regret that I got here first is now considered a complete philosophy. I regret that chairs have apparently lost their relationship with people. Next time, I will explain what happened at the bakery when someone saved 6 pastries with napkins while still standing in line undecided. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because if I have to keep explaining the difference between public space and personal territory, we might as well all grow from it together. I was not rude. I was not anti-laptop. I was protecting the shared coffee shop environment from becoming one person's remote office with audience seating. My side of the story, obviously.